Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and we often hear as we get older that our risk of colon cancer increases and that we should start having colonoscopies starting at 50. We hear about IBS and Crohn's disease, but not too much about diverticulitis. Today, I'm delighted to have with us Robin Yount, and she's the founder of Diverticulitis Rescue. Robin, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me.
Um, Again, we hear about diverticulitis and we don't hear a lot about it. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, basically, let me just start out saying that the 50 and over thing, throw that out the window.
Okay.
I was diagnosed when I was 35.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I even have people now that are coming to me at 18 years old. So this is something that we're going to see a lot more of as we go along and stuff. But basically, what I do is I take a holistic approach to managing diverticulitis and to head off flare-ups. So you can avoid the surgeries and the antibiotics and things like that.
And you have a 4-stage, easy to follow system, which we're going to get into. So that's what I really want to talk about, is that so many people, when it comes to diverticulitis, we hear about people suffering for years with unexplained symptoms, no answers from doctors. And many people really wait too long to get the necessary checkups anyway to ensure a healthy life. And since we now know it's really never too late to make positive changes, it's the little tweaks that make all the difference towards, a healthy, happy life. So let's start with the basics. What role does your colon play in digestion? I know it sounds simplistic, but not a lot of people know that, what it does, what your colon actually does.
Is your hub, right? Yeah. This is where everything is. And so, it's your microbiome. That's where they live, your healthy gut bacteria. So they basically process food in your colon. You're absorbing the water, the nutrients, the vitamins and the minerals. So this is where you're getting your nutrition from, going into your bloodstream and into your body for your health.
Yeah, and we're learning more and more about the gut microbiome. And can you go over that and how digestive disorders affect the essential function of our bodies?
Well, I mean, the microbiome is an aspect of it. It's a big aspect of it, but a lot of people from our poor diets, our low fiber diets, and the environments, the chemicals, and the different things that we're having to deal with, even our food sources, it's creating a problem in our digestive system and in our microbiome, where our microbiome, our good bacteria, are going down, and the sugar-laden foods, the processed foods and things that we eat, well, that's feeding the bad bacteria and they're going up. So we got an imbalance of gut bacteria. And like I said, your gut is your hub. This is where all the magic happens. And if your microbiome is off balance, then everything else is going to be off balance. It's connected to your overall health, your mind, your body, everything.
So let's hone in on diverticulitis. What is it, and what is? Maybe talk to us a little bit about diverticulitis and diverticulosis. Those are two terms related to it.
So most people, like if you go in for that routine colonoscopy, say that you're 50 and it's time to have that routine colonoscopy, a lot of times people will have diverticulosis. They'll see that in there, and the doctors, they'll say, oh, you're fine, eat a high fiber diet. And most people really don't go into flare-ups or have any issues with it. And basically it's just you develop these pouches in your colon, in the lining of your colon, that are compromised, like weak spots in your pouches. When I talk to people, I like to describe it as a balloon, right? So it's kind of like a balloon, and it's just a compromise. It's thinner, and things can get stuck in there, and you can develop infections. And that's when you're going into diverticulitis. And that's a whole nother ball game. Right. It can really affect your health. You could have perforations and things like that, and actually you can leak into your bloodstream if you really don't take care of it and handle it.
And so how does it start? How are the diverticulitis?
That's a good question, because I think it's something that comes gradually. You're going to have genetics and things like that come into play, lifestyle factors. For me, I go back and I look, well, how did mine start? I was sick for a while before I had my big flare up. It was a huge flare up. And I was doing the doctor to doctor, and they wanted to They told me that I probably had lupus. MS was on the table. I had all these autoimmune type things that were happening with me. I've always had gut issues.
Okay.
So even as a small child, I always suffered with like IBS, bloating, and those types of things. So I think that contributed to mine over the course of years. And then obviously, stress and lifestyle choices and things like that. I don't think it's like one sudden event that happens. I think it's something that happens over time. It's damage, right? It's a diseased colon.
And so what are the basic symptoms of it? Because symptoms are a funny thing because they can present in so many different ways. But when you're narrowing it down, what are the exact symptoms? Is it more pain, inability to go to the bathroom, diarrhea? What seems to be the most common?
All of it.
All of the above. Yeah.
All of it. And it could vary from person to person. But most of the time you can get like sudden severe pain. It can be a constant pain. It's not like anything you've ever felt before. It could be like a stabbing discomfort. Your bowel movements will be irregular. A lot of times there's constipation with it. Sometimes it could be the other way. You could have both constipation and diarrhea. Bloating is associated with it a lot of times because think about the balloon, right? So if we use the example of the balloon, it's blowing out, right? So it's getting thin and it's getting compromised. You can have nausea, you can have vomiting, you can have a fever, any of those types of symptoms.
That's a lot. That's
a lot.
Severe. Yeah.
Your body to know what's going on. Yeah.
And in your experience, because you're working as a health coach to help people work through this in a much more holistic way, do you find that there is a family history or it tends to be something that the whole family gets? Because that would really narrow it down as to where it's coming from, or not necessarily?
I think it contributes. I think it contributes. Like I have a sensitive stomach. I have a sensitive gut in my family. My younger son has a sensitive gut. So I'm hyper in tune with him to make sure that he doesn't have problems. I look back at my family history. My mom, her colonoscopies go back are fine. My sister, and they're not having those types of problems.
Right.
So my grandfather has some colon issues. So maybe a little bit of genetics there, but I do feel like a lot of it, is lifestyle factors and eating, because if you go back, right, did our grandparents have stuff like that, right? These types of diagnoses. So it's like kind of go back and see what happened previously and what's happening now and what's causing it.
This is so interesting because I'm sort of answering my own question by answering you this, but how does diverticulitis not only affect our digestive health, but our overall health, immunity, mental wellness, energy levels, and so on? What do you see as the big picture there?
All of it. If I go back to before my first flare up, I was a complete mess. I had the brain fog, right? I had vertigo. They were the lupus. I had inflammation throughout my entire body, skin issues and just name it. I had like allergies. I had allergy issues that I don't have anymore. So a lot of these things do coincide with, it's basically a leaky gut.
Okay.
Your gut is compromised, probably more than, what would be considered a leaky gut, right? Because you have those thinning of the walls and the pouches and things like that. So basically it's a leaky gut and you just don't want that stuff, going into your bloodstream. But so your there could be all kinds of things. That anxiety is a big one too. So you're like, that mind body is that mind body.
That really, really throws you off.
Sure.
Again, this is a little bit maybe out of something that the physicians would have to deal with, but when it gets infected, then you're really in trouble, right? That's where it can infect the whole body, because I've heard of people having severe extreme infections from this.
Sure, absolutely. Like I said, my very first flare, they didn't even think that wasn't even on the table as a diagnosis. That infection traveled up my intestine into my pancreas. My white blood cell count was high. They were looking at pancreatic cancer for me.
My goodness. Wow.
Yeah. So when I finally, they diagnosed mine with a colonoscopy, and that's not typical when you're in a flare. Typically they won't diagnose it that way, but I was in dire straits in the hospital. They're trying to figure out, and then they figured out that's what it was. And there was a relief for me because that's a lot better to deal with. Obviously.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Than the other things they thought might be happening.
Yeah.
So we're going to, you know, again, this besides surgeries and those dreaded diet restrictions that don't seem to work, let's talk about your approach to treating it.
Okay. Well, let's back up to what doesn't work.
Oh, okay. All right. Yep. Okay.
A little
Mhm.
bit. So
Sure.
what mainstream suggests that we do, and what I did for 6 years and got worse. So I've suffered for 6 solid years of doing it this way. And this is the way that most people do it, because, you know, you don't know any better. And
Right.
then when I changed things up, then that's when I started to heal. So basically, you know, somebody thinks they're in a flare up, they go to the emergency room, the doctor orders a CAT scan. They can see, okay, you have an inflammation infection there. You get your antibiotics, usually 2, Cifro and Flagyl, or
Right.
sometimes,
Right.
and those are pretty heavy duty antibiotic. I know the Cifro has like a black box label on it, you know, so
Yes.
these are pretty powerful antibiotics. And then they say, go on liquid diet, and then a low residue diet, which low residue diet for them is processed food, white food, sugars, flours, those types of inflammatory type foods.
So
And then
it's to avoid any fiber, right? That's the
right, well, because you don't want your colon to work.
yeah.
And I understand the reason, and it makes total sense, right? If they're on it, but you can't heal from the things that are causing the problem to begin with. And then they recommend laxatives, because constipation is a big part of this.
Yeah.
So you're on laxatives, and then they recommend fiber supplements. And then when you're feeling better, high fiber diet.
Okay.
Okay. This is where people make the mistake, because you might start feeling better, let's say a week, 2 weeks, when you're finished with your antibiotics. And then high fiber to a lot of people is the cardboard, right? The roughage, the solids, the hard stuff. And if your colon and your gut isn't ready, it's still not repaired. You might not have an infection there, but it's not ready yet. And then it can spin you into smoldering, or it can spin you into another flare up. And a lot of people, you know, they're having back to back flare ups, and then they're going on antibiotics again. And, you know, over a period of time, and that's really causing a problem. So that's kind of what mainstream is.
Okay.
It doesn't work. I started out with it just in my lower left, one area.
Okay.
I followed that protocol for 6 years, and I developed it in 3 more areas. It went, and then I was facing the surgery, and I'm like, well, it's developing. You're going to take my whole colon out, you know? And they're like, no, we'll just take out these pieces. And I'm like, I panicked. And that's when I started to change what I was doing and taking more of a natural approach to this. And then over time, I just started to feel better. And then I developed this diverticulitis rescue thing and just broke up.
Yeah, tell us all about the rescue. This is Robin, this is amazing that you found this on your own. It's like this is so much of what we talk about in life, in the holistic space, in the wellness space, is that close your eyes, rely on your own intuition, pay attention to what's working and what's not working for you. And that is not a snub of Western medicine, nor is it a snub of Eastern medicine, nor is it a snub of anybody's approach or protocol. It's about what works best for you at the time that you need it. So that's why could you walk us through your diverticulitis rescue? Because it's really fantastic.
Well, I guess the first thing is, like we say, listening to your body. That's the number one step. And how do you do that? You start journaling. You journal everything, your food, your symptoms, your supplements, your bowel movements, your water, your mood. A lot of people skip that part, and that absolutely factors into the whole equation. Okay. So there's different factors. It's not just a food thing, but the food is the most pressing, right? Because we got to eat, and we got to get to a point to where we can feel normal again. Right. And then we come into the 4 stages. So do you want me to just kind of break those up? And
yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So stage 1 is liquids. So that's what mainstream is, right? So you go on liquids for a few days. My stage 1 is not clear liquids. There's juicing. So you can juice like alkaline, low fat, FODMAP type vegetables. Not a lot of the fruit juices, because as you know, fruit juice is, once you juice it, it's sugar. Right. So trying to avoid all that sugar and things like that. So typically, when you go into stage one, let's just kind of give you some examples. Let's say that somebody's already had flares. By the time that they see me, they've already had flare-ups, and maybe they're smoldering or they're doing better, and then they kind of regress a little bit. Let's say that they start to regress and they ate something and threw them off and they get diarrhea. Stage one is perfect for that.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to pull back and you're going to go to stage one. You're going to rest your colon. Don't let it work. You're still getting nutrients with your bone broths and things like that. And then after a few days, 1 to 3 days, then you're easing into stage two. And then stage two is just an extension. So you're taking stage one with you. You're taking those bone broths. You're taking those juices and things like that, and you're incorporating it into your recipes in stage two. So you might take a carrot and some bone broth and make a nice pureed carrot soup. That's way more healthy than ramen noodles.
Yes. Let me ask you something about that on the liquids. What about coffees and teas? Amount of water, water is always my,
always clean water.
Yes,
clean water. Spring water, well water, things
yes.
like that. You know, you got to even pay attention to where you're getting your water from.
I think that absolutely. But, people who are, there's a tendency, Robin, as you know all too well, when people are starting this, there's a fear of deprivation.
Sure, yeah.
Right? People are terrified they're going to feel starving, or they're going to feel. So do you allow, if that's the right word, like I said, the coffees and the teas and maybe liquids that.
Now, if you're, and I don't know if you know much about Ayurveda and stuff. So
I do, a little bit,
yeah. Pitta, right? If you're too pitta, you don't want to drink coffee.
Yeah.
Right. But you have like, so your herbal teas and things like that. Jello, you can have homemade jello. And so that gives you a little bit of substance. Now, homemade, I say homemade.
Yes.
That stuff, that red stuff, full of sugars and chemicals. So you're making it on your own. So you're having some food. And my liquids, I just say 1 to 3 days.
Okay.
Some people will take it a week or longer. I feel like that's too much, and you're depriving your body, and your body needs those nutrients. Your cells need those nutrients in order to, to heal.
Right.
So that's what you're doing. You're giving yourself healing, nutritious type liquids in stage one, and then you're easing in your transition and into stage two. You're doing soups, smoothies, purees, mashes, things like that. And a lot of people they kind of jump into the meat right away. I'm like, come on, let's get some vegetables in there. This is a good opportunity. To start that diet now, start that process. And I do recommend, because gas and bloating and things like that is a lot of issues, go ahead and hit the low FODMAP stuff first when you're in stage one, stage two. So that's what I recommend for there. And then you just kind of stay there until you're feeling better. I wouldn't do it more than a couple of weeks. Okay. Again, some people, that fear is a big part of this. It's a big part of this. And also, going to other Facebook groups and things like that, and hearing about, well, you can't eat this and you can't have this, and you're gonna flare, and all that stuff is myth. It's myth. It's just kind of like, where are you at in the process? But so basically, you're giving your time. When you're in stage two, you're in a repair stage. Okay, so you're resting in stage one, your colon's not working. And then when you're in stage two, you're repairing. So you're still having those bone broths. You're putting collagen powder in your smoothie. So you're putting things in there that's going to help fix that leaky gut. Yeah. That's what those 2 stages are for. So you can't go past them too quickly.
So it's interesting to me that the colon has such a remarkable ability to repair itself.
Yes. Absolutely. I think it's going to be a little easier for young people.
Yes. Yeah.
The older we are, and it just depends on how much damage, but people have been getting really good results from this.
And like I said, I think that's another thing, is that we need to embrace emotionally, mentally, and physically that we can repair and we can heal ourselves. Right. I mean, that's
what the body's made to do. Right.
Yes, exactly.
That's what we're supposed to do. You get a cut, it's not going to be gaping all the time, right? If you take care of it and you put what you need on it and keep it clean and all that, it's gonna repair on its own.
And when it repairs, it's gone. It's back to normal. I mean,
right. But if you keep hitting it, sugar in it and salt and all that stuff, right? It's not going to heal. It's not going to heal.
It's a great analogy. So next up, so after we repair the damage, the next step now is
getting into stage 3.
okay.
So what you can do, and you can do this because you have to listen to your body. So there's different ways you can do this. So when you're in stage 2, you can be at the end of stage 2. That's what we kind of like try to get them there without jumping too much. Maybe what you could do, instead of pureeing your soups, pureeing the vegetables, have them chunky.
Okay.
So you see, it's going to make the colon work a little bit harder. You can test things out to see if everything's working, and then you can gradually dip your toe into stage 3. And that's when you're starting to add in those higher FODMAP foods. You're adding in your soluble fiber foods. So I've split stage 3 and stage 4 by the fiber.
Okay.
So soluble fiber foods, that's what your gut bugs love to eat. High FODMAP foods. So sometimes people stay on a low FODMAP diet because it fixes their symptoms, but then you're starving your gut bacteria.
Can you just tell everybody what the FODMAP diet is? Because not everybody knows.
Basically, it's the sugar carbs in our foods, right? So like in mangoes and things like that, there's different categories and they've got these long names, fructans, and I'll just do the short end of it, oligo, whatever. I'm just saying there's long, and there's different categories, and there's a category of foods that go with each one of those. So like onions, garlic, celery, asparagus are one category. So apples, pears is another category. And some foods have 2 categories, so you have to be mindful of that. So basically, they go through, the high FODMAP foods go through your small intestines quicker, so they can feed your gut bacteria. And if you have an imbalance there and you don't have enough in there, then that's where you're going to get that gas. And if you're constipated, and this is where we really run into trouble with people. If you're constipated and you eat something that's high FODMAP and you're not ready yet, and you get that gas, then you're going to get that pressure. So when we go back to that balloon analogy, right? So let's say you get a balloon out of a packet. It's still a balloon, right? Maybe it's harder to blow up. You can get a little bit of air in it, but every time you're constipated, as your colon, every time that you're constipated and you're trying to move things quicker, maybe even diarrhea, maybe things are moving a little quicker than you want, it's creating that pressure. Here's your pouches, here's your balloons. They're getting bigger, they're getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and then you could potentially go into a flare-up.
Okay.
But it doesn't always go into a flare-up. So this is where it gets tricky, and this is where tuning into your body and knowing what things feel like, so you can make a decision. What do I do? I try to tell people, handle the symptom first. If it's gas, maybe take an activated charcoal to see if you can calm that gas down, right? Instead of going on antibiotics right away. And then that creates another host of problems down the road to recover from that. So it's really tricky.
Yeah.
It can be. Yeah. But once you get the hang of it, it's like, okay, it's just part of your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so now we're working to replenish the microbiome, get it healthy, get the digestion healthy. And you don't want to be constipated, nor do you want to have diarrhea. You want to have an even flow.
And that's how you're going to gauge, right? So your bowel movements is a good way to gauge where you're at.
That's exactly what my next question was. The poop conversation. Will it change colors as you're going through these stages? Or do you tend to have normal bowel movements?
If things are more yellow, that's more diarrhea. So I would I would say that the color, not necessarily color, but maybe the consistency of it, right? The consistency of it, because if you're in stage 2, you're still eating fiber. Okay. Your fruit, vegetables, squashes, low FODMAP, maybe bananas in the smoothies and things. You're still having a bowel movement, right? But maybe it's not as bulky and as full. So when you add the soluble fiber in, that's going to bulk things up a little bit for you, and hopefully start helping you go to the bathroom. But with the soluble fiber, let me just say this. So in that stage 3, everything's cooked. So you're still transitioning from that stage 2 to stage 3. Everything's a slow transition, everything, every day, because one day you might need to be in stage 1. Okay. And you might be in stage 3 or meal or whatever. So that's what I'm teaching. There's an ebb and flow to the process, right? That's the whole program.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're in maintenance, you're flowing and stuff. And if you, let's say that you started at stage 1 and you're going through and you've made it to stage 3 and you start adding some foods in, maybe you start getting symptoms, you might need to back up a little bit and kind of get yourself squared away until you go back into it. But you're avoiding any tough skins, like pepper skins, apple skins. That's your insoluble fiber.
Right.
Okay. Stage 4. So you're peeling your apples. Things are still cooked. You're eating a lot of vegetables. Hopefully by the time you are well into stage 3, your broccolis, your cauliflower. I know all the scary stuff.
Yeah.
I'll start there. You don't start there, but you want to work up to like 30 plants per week.
Okay.
Is what you're working up to. And then he's into stage 4.
And we're told that all the time, bombardment. I mean, I'm in the business. I'm in the food and nutrition business,
Right.
And aging and wellness at any age. But it's like we're just told all the time, you need to eat a ton of cabbage. You need to eat a ton of broccoli every day. Otherwise, if you don't eat apples, bananas, oranges, broccoli, cabbage, you're going to get sick, So I think people have to retrain themselves a little bit. And like, I love what you said is stop bouncing around on all the different sites and Facebook pages, and your brother-in-law had a stomach ache, so you're listening to him. Just stay the course on your own program and see how that feels. Right.
And check in with yourself. Are you feeling better?
Yes.
If you're feeling better, that's a clue.
Yeah.
That's a clue. And don't second guess that. Right. And listen, this is like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So it's like this, right? It's kind of like having a baby, right? You remember, I don't know if you have any kids.
Yes, I do. I have a child. Sure. Yeah.
Right. It's right to hold it and then you go and then you're like this.
Yes.
That's exactly how this goes. That's how it goes. And so you can't get discouraged. It took a while to get like this. This is
yes.
just
Yes.
A while to kind of figure out what your personal balance. This is about balance. Your microbiome is like your fingerprint. There's no 2 guts that are the same. So you got to figure out what your balance is. Yeah.
And I can't say enough about giving yourself a break emotionally, just that, right, is rest when you need it, step away from your desk when you need to, just check in with yourself every day at some point in the day. And like you say, how are you feeling right now today? There's an ebb and flow to that for all of us, no matter how highly evolved you are or how healthy you think you are. We all need to do those check-ins with ourselves.
And it's easy to get out of that habit too. So you
absolutely
have to be conscious and aware about it and give yourself that permission and don't feel guilty about it.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? As women, we're like taking care of everybody else. And we're usually the last one on the list. And it's like, that needs to flip.
Right. Absolutely.
Like the airplane, right? You got to put your own mask on before you can help anybody else.
Absolutely.
And that's the conversation. Honestly, it needs to be happening with women,
And you're allowed to say no. I keep saying that, no is not wishy-washy. It's a stance you're going to take, and you have a right to say, this is too much for me. I can't do any more than this today. And tell yourself that, it's, and what's interesting, as a little bit of an aside, because I think this is our, I heard from my gastroenterologist, thank God I had a very positive result to my colonoscopy. There was nothing going on there. But, what both doctors had told me over the years that I worked with on GI health is that your GI system has almost like its own brain, its own heart, its own life.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a second system.
I said they call it your second brain.
Yes,
right?
Yes, exactly.
First brain,
exactly.
Honestly.
And it responds and it reacts to everything going on in your life. That feeling of, if your stomach hurts up here, it's your intuition. If it hurts in another area, it's guilt. If it hurts in another area, it's pain. It is so interesting how when we start to really take a good hard look at that, it should hopefully give you the impetus to take care of your digestive health.
Right. But you got to get people to slow down.
Yep.
And be able to check in. And that's hard.
Oh, it's very hard.
Very hard. I went to therapy and all that. And she taught me about awareness and this. Taught at Chatter Girl, and I remember I went in one time. I said, I think there's 3 of them there. Like, I don't know. There's several.
Yeah, I don't know who to listen to today. Exactly. And it's your own. Yep. Your head is spinning.
Basically, being an observer in your life. It's being able to separate from your body a little bit and be an observer and just kind of figuring out and being investigator.
Yeah.
Too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Look at it as more of a research and development kind of thing on yourself.
Now you're leading up to all this to get to the place where you're restoring the balance in your GI system. Tell us about how that's managed.
Well, when we get into stage 4, so that's so stage 3, you're replenishing your microbiome, and then you get into stage 4. I call that you're finding you're restoring your balance.
Okay.
Right? So that's when you're kind of in your maintenance. Now, when you're in stage 4, you're still in stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, right? So some people think, well, I'm in stage 4. This is all I'm going to eat. Might be too much for you because you're in insoluble fiber.
Mm-hmm.
So insoluble fiber doesn't break down. Your gut microbiome doesn't break it down. Your digestive enzymes don't break it down. And it basically is designed, to irritate your colon. So you release and evacuate everything. So it's a really good design.
Yeah.
But when you have a diseased colon or a leaky gut, it can be really difficult. So that's why it's important to work these stages and make sure that you're checking in with yourself. But that's going to be your salads. That's going to be your nuts and your seeds and things like that. And a lot of people are afraid of the nuts and the seeds, and I eat them pretty much daily.
So that's interesting that you got to that point. So you have managed to successfully reintroduce the foods that we know are good for us back into your diet. And is there any food items that are considered healthy by, the general standards that you say are absolute no-nos when you are
I would be
just recovering, just the maintenance? Is there anything that you say besides obviously processed food, no fast food, no sugar? We all want to stay away from that. There are no apps, but what about the occasional glass of wine or ice cream cone or
ice cream cone, you got to be mindful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that lactose? Take a digestive enzyme.
Yeah. Yep.
Around that. That's just great.
Okay.
If you have a problem with low FODMAP foods, I had to take that, and I still take the Transformation Digest. It's just a wonderful, I'd say that was my number one supplement when I was getting through all of this. And I couldn't eat apples for the longest time without having to take a digestive enzyme because it would make me have gas. I can eat apples with no problem. I can eat broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower with no digestive enzyme now. Now, if my gut was to go off, be off a little bit, then I'm going to take a digestive enzyme before I eat that. So I can fluctuate, right? So it's that listening to your body and being like, okay, what is it? What's going on? Maybe I need to pull back. Maybe my digestion is not working so good today. Let me take a digestive enzyme or maybe not eat that, But as far as health food, I think that everything's on the table.
Okay.
As long as you know where you're at within the stages, I would be careful with sunflower seeds.
Okay.
That's because those think about that end is very sharp.
Yes.
Don't chew that up properly. It's possible you can, and so I would be really careful. If you're going to eat them, make sure you're chewing up your food really well.
Right.
I do pumpkin seeds over a sunflower seed without the shell.
What about chia seeds, flax seeds?
I actually, in stage 2, once you've been there a while and you've been tolerating some food, I actually recommend that they start putting in has to be milled flaxseed. So they're getting their omegas. They're starting to get their little bit of fiber. You're starting to build that fiber, right? And all the good stuff that's coming in with that, your proteins and things like that. Yeah. But chia seeds, that one I always tell people, end of stage 3. After you have some foods because that's very, it can make you go, right? It can really throw off your balance and stuff if you have too much. And always err on the side of just a little bit when you're introducing something instead of going for the whole amount, maybe a half a teaspoon in your smoothie instead of 2 tablespoons, right?
That's, that was exactly what I was just going to bring up because I had a researcher on, an anthropologist, and she researched chia seeds in Africa and why those runners, those marathon runners, African marathon runners, are so successful that they can run a marathon without stopping to drink water like us mere mortals do when we run. The chia seeds actually retain water and keep you from getting dehydrated. So they're a wonderful product in that way. But it's like everything else, Robin, in the American diet, someone hears something's good for you, so they eat 2 cups of it. Instead, it's just a tablespoon, like you say, maybe even a teaspoon, just to get started. People say, this is good for me, I'm going to eat it all day, every day. And this is where we get into trouble, that variety. That's why I was asking specifically if there's anything 100% to stay away from besides the processed and the fast food. So this is really encouraging news for people who have it. Let me ask you, Robin, if surgery is indicated or someone comes to you post-surgically because that was the path they went down,
Sure.
do you recommend this program only after the surgery or also as a pre-op, maybe to lessen the symptoms if it's indicated? Yeah.
Before and after.
Yeah. Okay.
You have more than a diverticulitis problem. Remember, we got more of a whole
Yes.
gut problem that we need to
Yes.
work on.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a good idea to work on that before surgery and get yourself as healthy as you possibly can. So your recovery, you have a better chance with your recovery. And, you don't want to be inflamed or infected when you get that surgery,
Right.
because you end up with a bag. So you have to be mindful of that as well. And then after surgery, absolutely, I would totally go through it. And I would still, it doesn't matter what kind of gut issue you have.
Yeah.
It's going to work. It's going to help you be able to add those high fiber foods, that healthy diet back in. It's just that when you have diverticulitis and you have those pouches, if somebody didn't have that, and let's say they just have regular gut issues, it's going to transition them smoother. But if they went in and went straight to salads, they'll get the gas and the bloating, but maybe it won't hurt as bad.
Okay.
Maybe it will send them into a flare. Whereas if you have diverticulitis, that could be very dangerous for you. So that's why, it's better to kind of ease into everything and make sure your gut is healed before you get into that kind of thing.
Robin, is this an approach that the whole family can participate in so that the patient doesn't feel singled out? I always worry about, I think with all of us, we want to embark on something. We want to change a health habit. We want to quit something. I'm astounded. This is an aside, but I want to tell you this, and I tell all of my guests that come on in the health arena, we still have to tell people to stop smoking. And we still have to tell people to exercise. I mean, and I don't mean rigorous. I mean, we still have to tell people to get up and take a walk around. So in a family situation, when one person has an issue and they feel singled out and they don't want to deal with it. So, can we incorporate this into the whole family's diet as well?
Yeah, I think you should.
Yeah.
Right. Because, let's think about it. If there's a genetic component to it.
Yes. Yes.
Kids are going to end up maybe even worse off, because as we go along and our food is more depleted from the nutrients and, things like that. So, and there's many people, they've come to me and said, well, my husband's off the soft drinks and now my kid's doing this. Even my kid, I went gluten-free first and he had some gut issues and things like that. And so I took him off, and he had eczema. And so I took him off gluten. And so we're both been gluten-free for years, and he doesn't have eczema or anything, and even his ADHD, it affects him neurologically with the skin and things like that. Whereas me, it was more of a gut type of issue. So it's going to affect people in different ways. But I think that it's your responsibility as a parent to make sure you nurture, healthy habits and things like that for your children.
Absolutely.
So they have a better shot when they get older, and I still worry about my kid. He goes to his friend's house and he binges on sugar, and I just like,
Yeah.
you
can't control everything they do. And then you have, like in my household, the kid is like, well, my mother only makes me eat healthy. I'm going to have fun when I go to someone else's house. So that absolutely, plays a part in all that. So, and again, I want to emphasize that, Robin, I know you're on board with me on this, and I tell everybody this, is that don't feed your kids differently than the way you eat. You and your husband prepare a beautiful gourmet meal, but then you do takeout or chicken wings or whatever it is for the kids. There's no such thing as kid food and adult food. The whole family should engage in good, healthy, fine food. So your kids grow up knowing what it's like to eat good, home-cooked, healthy food. And then to have to transition them back, like you were saying, from the sodas to the fast food. I mean, they're going to go out and do it. I mean, I don't know how old your son is, but my daughter's in college, and, she explored all kinds of things when she was in college. She's just finishing up now. She's graduating, and I'd get the bill and I'm like, you ate there? Like, what are you doing? She
Yeah,
goes,
right.
yeah, well, mommy, that's what 21-year-olds do. We go out and we try different things. I'm like, okay, that's where you're at. And, hopefully it comes around later. So Robin, I wanted to ask you to share your top tips for keeping the colon healthy, whatever you're faced with.
Well, honestly, I think, obviously following the 4 stages is
Yes.
going to be your main thing that you're going to deal with. You're going to eat clean,
Yeah.
right? Try to eat organic when you can. If it's got like a thick skin, like a pineapple or whatever, you don't have to get organic.
Right.
If you're eating the skin and it's better, you don't want to put those chemicals in your body, and make sure you wash it. Even if you can't get organic, it's okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Nothing, but make sure that you're washing, your produce and things like that. Fermented foods, you have to add those into your diet because that's putting the bugs back in there.
Okay.
Right. So I always recommend sauerkraut as a wonderful. You can start that in stage 1, actually, with just a little bit of the juice.
Okay.
It's that easing into it again, because you don't want to go in there and start cramming it in there and you have an imbalance there, and then things start going like this, so you're easing into it. And I tell people 2 forkfuls per day.
Okay.
Whatever. I love fermented cauliflower. It's absolutely delicious. It's easy to make. Salt water. That's it.
Yeah.
So I make my own. It's just wonderful. I have several different varieties in my refrigerator, and sometimes I'll put it on my plate. Sometimes I'll just get me a forkful and go on my way. Obviously moving your body.
Yes.
I'm a yoga teacher.
Okay.
Yoga has been a huge part of my recovery. I teach privates. They don't have diverticulitis, but I see how that has affected their overall health.
Yes.
And their anxiety and stress. I have a lady, she's a little bit more intense. And she's like, I just don't fly off the handle like I used to. I just have a little bit more space to respond overreacting to things.
Right.
So that's a lot of, that inner work. You have to look at yourself. You got to be willing to do that and figure out what's not working and face it and go in. You got to go in sometimes to get out, right? So I've done a lot of inner work and things like that. Like I said, moving your body, regular exercise. Obviously, you need to move. You don't want to be stagnant. Healthy relationships. All that stuff has to do with your gut health.
Yes.
Every gut health has to do with your gut health. Because if you're stressed out, you're not healing. You can't heal if you're in fight or flight.
Right.
It's impossible.
The body goes rigid and does not function in the way that it's supposed to. And as we all know, that's meant for very short periods of time to protect yourself, not chronically.
Right. And I think that a lot of us are in that chronic, and I know I used to be that chronic state where every little thing, right. And you're just, your heart just, and now stuff happens and I'm just like, oh, okay. It's definitely a fact. And that might be some of the age too, but,
yes.
and I think about like, gosh, that would probably get me all, wigged out, spin out. I used to call them spin outs.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So
and they're hard to de-escalate. That's the other thing. It's just, you get wound up and it's like you can't come down. And that's why I say take a walk. To me, I do yoga twice a week. Walking to me cures everything. Keeps your body upright, opens up your chest, and just go. And people say that when someone's in a fit or in an anger, they say, go for a walk. Count to 10.
Dancing is me. So I teach Zumba too.
Oh, okay.
That's my personal. I was like, that's my personality and stuff.
Yeah.
So I will, if I do feel that frustration or that, I'll turn on my music, and I just love my Latin music. It's just like, how can you not be happy, right?
Absolutely.
But if I feel, so it just depends on what's going on. Is that listening to your body? But if I feel kind of out of sorts, then I might get on my yoga mat and really get into my deep breathing and into my body and get moving that way too. So it just depends on what's going on.
Absolutely.
What do you need? What do you need?
Robin, this has been so informative, and so it's just a delight having you here on the show. I want to thank you so much, Robin Yount. Please give us the proper website so I don't get it wrong.
Diverticulitisrescue.com.
Diverticulitisrescue.com. We're going to put it up. And I always ask my guests in closing, what do you like about getting older?
I think that it's like that wisdom, right? it's just, I can see things that I couldn't see before, or maybe it's
Mhm.
like listening to myself, listening to that intuition. I feel like I'm just full of wisdom. I have my health, you know, and I'll be 53 in a couple of months. And it's like, I
Great.
have my health. I can do circles around 20-year-olds, and I've got this going on too. So
Mhm,
it's like
mhm.
a good age. It
Good.
really
Good.
is. Yeah.
And I hope it continues well into, I wish everybody to live to be at least 120. That's my mantra.
Oh, 120.
Mhm.
Wow. I have to think about that one.
So thank you, Robin, again, and thank you all for listening. Please subscribe to my channel for more engaging discussions about all things aging well. And for feedback and topic requests, please contact me at www.patriciagreenberg.com. Thank you again, Robin.